Hello and welcome to Gibson's Bookstore Remote. I am Elizabeth, the events coordinator for Gibson's Bookstore, and I'm here with two young adult authors with me this evening. We have Jessica Olson, who is joining us from Texas. She is the author of her debut novel, Sing Me Forgotten, which right here on the shelf. Congratulations. It is a
Thank you.
YA fantasy gender bent retelling of Phantom of the Opera. We are very excited to have you. You were graduated from Bow High School, so welcome back, so to speak, to the state. And she's joined in conversation by fellow author Adalyn Grace, who is the author of All the Stars and Teeth. Now, both of these books are available from Gibson's Bookstore. We offer in-store browsing, curbside pickup, and we do ship. Now, if you have questions for these two authors, please click around and find the chat sidebar. There is a panelist and attendees option so that you can have a good conversation going back and forth with your fellow attendees. Start thinking about questions because these two have a surprise for you for the person with questions. Welcome you two to Gibson's Bookstore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jessica, please tell us a little bit about Sing Me Forgotten.
Well, I think you kind of summed it up. It's a fantasy retelling of the Phantom of the Opera. So it's told from the point of view of kind of the Phantom character. She's a girl who has a forbidden magic that meant that she was supposed to have been killed at birth, but she is harbored and kept safe by the owner of the opera house, and she keeps hidden, her whole life until she meets a boy who she finds out has some secrets in his past that could lead to her finding her way out of the opera house and into the real world. And so it's kind of all about her discovering her power and coming into her own. So it's kind of a villain origin story too. she goes down the dark side, but
All right, we're excited for this event. Ladies, take it away.
Thank you.
Yay. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. I'm so excited to be here and to get to talk to you. I first read this book a very long time ago.
Very early draft.
very early draft when Jessica entered Pitch Wars, which is like this writing contest where you enter to hopefully be paired up with a mentor. And I almost picked her, and then her mentor literally fought me like tooth and nail. I was like, no, like this is mine. I was like, well, I want this one. So I'm so excited to be here. This has been like so long in the making. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
And I just want to talk all about your book. And you just kind of explained, what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want to know, the inspiration behind it and why you wanted to reimagine Phantom of the Opera. Like what is it about Phantom of the Opera that really inspired you to write a whole book where it's like a gender bent version of it?
Yeah. So it kind of comes from an obvious Phantom obsession. So I grew up listening to Phantom of the Opera. My parents love music, and so we always had music playing in the house, like classical music, country music, like anything, but they played Phantom of the Opera a lot. My dad worked from home for a long time, and he used to listen to Broadway shows, like soundtracks, like while he worked in the garage. And so so I knew the Phantom of the Opera by heart by the time I was like 6 or 7, because that was one of his favorite ones to listen to. He listened to like the original soundtrack with like Sarah Brightman and stuff. And so I always wanted to be Christine, because I hadn't seen the show or anything, but like I heard her voice and she's just like the prettiest voice ever. And so I wanted to be Christine, and I would like go out in the backyard and sing opera and embarrass my parents.
Did anyone not have a phase where they wanted to be Christine? Like even just hitting those notes, like
right? It's like I can hit that high E, I swear. But yeah, so I grew up like just loving the Phantom of the Opera. And I always just kind of connected with Christine, and like, or not connected, but just like loved her story, and was like, I want to, like be like the underdog that like comes out of nowhere and just like gets the lead role, and all the boys want her and all that stuff, And, but then when I saw the play as an adult, because I didn't see the show like at all, like not even like small productions. I just knew the music and I'd read the book and stuff. growing up, but I didn't see the show until I saw it on Broadway in New York when I was older. I think I was graduated from college by that point. And it was interesting to me that when I watched the show, it wasn't Christine that I like was super drawn to. When I watched the show, it was the Phantom. And I was like, so like, I just felt like I saw so much of myself in him, like because of the medical condition I had, I looked really different growing up than my peers, and I got teased and made fun of for my appearance, and like something that I couldn't control. And so I really like identified with him because he had that, you know, he was shunned because of his face. And so it's just like, I saw so much of myself in the Phantom that like Christine's story wasn't even like interesting to me anymore. Like I wanted to know like his side of the story, like what drove him to become where he was and stuff. And like, and I like felt some of his anger and I felt some of his pain. So like when it occurred to me, like it was just this thought that occurred to me, like you could write a Phantom of the Opera book. I instantly was like, well, it has to be the Phantom story. It just has to, because I want to show like the kind of like pain and the kind of hate and the kind of anger that can drive someone to become the Phantom of the Opera and become like so desperate for love that you would do anything, and even like cruel things. And so that's kind of where it started and where it kind of like grew from. And then like the idea for the magic actually came separately. I was thinking of it in context of another book. I was thinking of like having a world where memories were currency and like you could trade them. And then one day it occurred to me to like put them together. And then that's kind of where Sing Me Forgotten took off. But
that's awesome. I mean, I'm really glad it took off because now we all get to read it. I have like a list of questions because I will just go off on tangents, but I am about to go off on a tangent because I'm curious if you have heard Phantom, the musical, not Phantom of the Opera, but there's a musical called Phantom. Did you like that one?
Mari Yessen or what is it?
I think so. Yeah.
I've actually seen a stage production at like a community theater production. And like I sobbed like a baby when I saw it. And it was so good, and it like made the Phantom so much more of a human character. Like it just showed like he makes jokes and he just shares his whole tragic life. And I don't know, I just felt like it humanized him so much more.
I agree. I used to work in live theater, and that's one of the shows that we did. And we'd get a ton of people who were like, wait, this isn't Phantom of the Opera. And it's like, it's musical. It's wonderful. It's the same story, but it's different. And
it's still the same book, but
yeah, everybody go listen to it. It is wonderful. But okay, I am curious, what is one of your favorite aspects of this book when you created it? Like, did you love the characters, the world? Like, what was the most kind of intoxicating thing to you as the writer to dive into?
I think for me, I'm like I'm a romantic, like at heart. Like I love romance. And if a book doesn't have a good romance, like I'm like, what's even the point? Like they didn't even kiss. Like, why did I waste how many hours of my life to read that book? So for me, I think the most fun thing to write and the thing that like I love the most about the story is the relationship between Isda and Emmerich, because I feel like it challenges both of them, and particularly Isda in so many ways, more than just like, oh, like we love each other and like how do we get together? Like it's more like challenging her to accept pieces of herself that she's never thought about accepting, because he accepts them, and like he shows her that she can be loved the way that she is without having to apologize for it, the way that she's been taught she has to, you know, her whole entire life. And I felt like that was the thing that, like, above all else, I really really connect, like I really like their relationship was really important to me in that way. So
I love their relationship. I think they're so much fun. This isn't one of my questions either. Like you're just talking, I'm like, I have so many questions for you. Did you have any, like, what was the most difficult thing to work on? Or did you have any pushback because, you know, this main character isn't nice, you know, she's not like a what the media likes to present female characters as.
I've actually wrote an article about this like a couple weeks ago. It has been kind of tricky because, and I could talk about this for hours. Like, I might get like started on like this tirade, but like we have so many like anti-heroes and villainous men in media that like we love. Like we've got Kaz Brecker from the Six of Crows books. We have the Darkling. We have like Damon Salvatore from the Vampire Diaries. Like since I just finished that, like that's on my head. We got like the Joker, and everyone loves the Joker, and everyone loves Loki, and like, or like for example, like Kylo Ren, like he freaking killed Han Solo when people are like cuddling with cardboard cutouts of him like in their bedrooms and stuff. And like don't get me wrong, like I love bad boys, like I love them, like I am totally like, you know, I am here for Loki and I'm like here for the bad guys. I love Kaz Brecker. I love like all of the villains in like all of, you know, books or whatever. But when was the last time anyone got that excited about a female villain? Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone excited about a female villain like that. And I don't think it's because there are female villains. Like it's, in my opinion, it's because people don't create female villains the same way they create male villains. Because I think so much of our society tries to make sure that women stay nice, and it makes them uncomfortable if women are not nice and if we don't sit down and smile. And so I actually did receive a little bit of like a tricky time when I was trying to get agents, and then later on trying to get editors. We got a lot of, oh, well, she's like, she goes too far, or she's too unlikable, or, you know, she's a little bit too dark. And I was like, but like she's literally the Phantom of the Opera. So when she's a dude, it's like the longest running Broadway musical in the world. But when she's a girl, she's suddenly like, oh, she goes too far. Like she drops a chandelier. Like, no, we can't do that. Like, and so I think for me, it was like really important to kind of show that girls don't have to be good and they don't have to be nice to have stories worth telling. And I think that if like media has more villainous women who do like really terrible things, and or like even are redeemable, you know, the way that like Kylo Ren kind of got his redemption and all of that stuff. If we see more of that in the media, then women won't be villainized like in our day-to-day lives for just like existing, or like, you know, just for like speaking up for ourselves, or for, you know, trying to take charge, you know, like you know, I don't know. I think you get what I'm saying, but I think that if we had like way worse villains that were women, that like we could live without being villainized for just existing. I don't know.
No, I mean, what you're saying is so true. And I think it's so sad because, you know, this has been like bred into us, like ingrained into us for our entire lives and like centuries before, you know, for such a long time. And I totally get what you're saying, because I received the same sort of pushback from Amora.
Amora isn't, you know, she's not like nice. So
no, yeah. And whenever you have a female character who, you know, is not the greatest, maybe like a little bit morally gray, I've certainly noticed, you know, I think even the wording of reviews are often very, very different. One thing that really I struggle with is hearing a lot of reviews. It's like, oh, I wanted to slap this character. Like they annoyed me. I want to slap them. And like, exactly. Like that's physical harm. And you would never say that about like Kaz Brecker, because he has really awesome cheekbones.
Right.
Like, so I totally get what you're saying. It's such a frustrating problem, but I think that, you know, by creating more of these characters, hopefully one day we will get there where this is just not like a thing. Like there's not these different judgments, because it's so hard and so sad and so frustrating. But I'm glad that she's not a cookie cutter and she's not super nice. And I love like kind of like the villain origin stories.
Yeah. And it was really fun to explore like her being villainous and being powerful and still having like still showing that like she's, you know, relatable. Like my goal wasn't to make you like her. Like that's not the goal in the story. Like the goal is to show you like for you to relate to her and for you to like see like how someone could be driven to that level. But the goal isn't for you to like be like, oh, she would be my best friend. Like that's not my goal, because I don't think Izza wants to be your friend.
Right.
So so I totally agree. But I love to see, I think YA has been doing like it's starting to get more of like the morally gray heroines like more than they used to, and I would love to see that more like in like mainstream media too, like movies and television and stuff. Like I just hope it's like just starting, and that we'll start to see just a broader range of villains, all kinds and shapes and sizes and backgrounds, and just so
Me
that we can
too.
stop
And I hope it's
villainizing
not
people.
just, and I hope it's not just like, oh, let's give a girl a sword and have her reject all femininity. And now she's cool, because that's what we've seen too. But I am glad that you created this character and that we are getting more of it. And I will move on to my next question, which is, okay, so now that you have debuted, your book is officially out in the world, people are reading it.
Yeah.
Like looking back, because it's a very long lead up to having your book actually come out.
It is.
What is something that has surprised you through that lead up? And like now that it's out, what is something that has surprised you?
I think what surprised me is how much I would never, ever, 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 ever want to read my book ever again. like I thought that like I loved my book, and like and I still do. I love it. But like, I got the audiobook like clip, and I was like, I listened to like 2 sentences. I was like, nope, we're turning that off. Cause like, it's just like, you read it so many times that all you can see are its flaws. And so like the only, like, even the opening it up, like when people are like, hey, can you sign, your signature or whatever in my book and put your favorite quote. And I like, even opening the book to find a quote, I was just like, oh, I hate every word in this book. Like, shut it, put it away. Like, just because you like read it so many times that it all sounds, I don't know if this is the case for you with your books, but it's
gosh, yeah.
It's like I never want, and so I think that shocked me, like just how fundamentally like deep the hatred for reading my own words would go.
Right.
I'm hopeful that in a couple of years, like it'll cool off and I'll be able to look at it again and be able to.
I'm waiting to see. I hope so too. I mean, I don't.
You had to read it again though because you wrote a sequel, right?
No, I didn't read it again.
No.
I was just like, I hope I remember everything correctly.
Because I'm not opening that.
And like apparently, I don't know, I did fine, but no, I don't think people realize like how many times we have to read.
So many times.
Yep. So many times. Like I probably read Stars and Teeth at least 20 times before it came out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a lot. You kind of get really sick of it. So
yeah.
What about now that it's out? Has anything surprised you about this process? Like that people are getting to read it now?
I think the thing, which is, this is going to sound weird, but I think the thing that is surprising me the most is that people are liking it. Like I've been getting messages, because I guess like in my head, and it's probably coming from the same thing, where I'm like, I can't stand to look at it anymore. So I assume that everyone else is going to feel that way. And like, everybody prepares you, like everybody like warns you, like people are, like people are going to reject it. People are not going to like it. Like, prepare you for that. And that is hard. Like when people like really don't like your book, you get like a really bad review that you get tagged in on Instagram or something. But I have been like pleasantly surprised by the people who've like sent me messages and said that they loved the book or whatever, because I'm like, oh, so like good stuff exists too. Cause I just heard that it was going to be really bad. So it's been like, I don't know. It's crazy I think it's just really surreal to know that people are reading this story that has been like just mine for so long, and it's like years of like lead up, and like people are going to read it, but like it doesn't sink in until people are actually reading it. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same for you, but like when I put out a book and like it comes out, I feel like the day it comes out, I'm like, oh, I wrote this book. I don't remember this book. Like you're so kind of removed from it because you're working on the next thing. Because especially in YA, they like to have you like a year ahead. So like you're already pretty much editing the next book or like done with the next book. And like in the other books world, did you feel that too? Is that like just me where it's just like a disconnect where you're like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, no, it was super weird because I've been so thick in like edits for book 2 that I almost like forgot about Sing Me Forgotten until like a month ago. And then people were like, your book's coming out next month. Right? I was like, oh shoot, you're right. I forgot about that book because we haven't worked on it in a year. So yeah, I've been like stuck in my book 2 world for a long time now. So
oh, I feel that. okay, what was, without spoiling anything, what was your favorite scene in this book to write?
So I've been asked that, I think once or twice, and I'm like, it's hard every time. I think my favorite scene, it's kind of middle to early of the book. There's a duet scene between Isda and Emmerich, like before they like have feelings for each other, but they like sing a duet. And that was a really fun scene to write. But it was also like, it felt very like Phantom to me. Like it was like the music of the night. Like, I don't know. It was really fun to write. And I think that's one of my favorite scenes. I also really like the um the ending with the chandelier and stuff. I'm not gonna not gonna spoil, but that was really fun to write when she goes full villain. So
That's always the best.
Yeah.
I loved all of those parts too. Okay.
You.
You're not, besides Isda,
Mm-hmm.
do you have, like, who was your favorite character to write? I feel like I know.
Emmerich.
Yeah.
Emmerich was my favorite. And it's funny because he was actually and like if any of my family is watching this or whatever, like he was inspired by my husband 100%. Like even some of the lines he said are like direct quotes that things my husband has said. And so it was just really fun because like when people are like, oh my gosh, I love it, Emmerich, I'm like, ha, I got the real thing. Like, but anyway, it's just fun. He was my favorite character to write. I mean, he's inspired from my husband, but he's also very much his own character. He grew into himself a lot more and like became his own person as I wrote him. And like, I feel like he like is so many things that that bring me joy. Like he loves snacks and candy and he like always keeps candy and snacks with him and he's always cracking jokes and he can't ever take anything seriously. And I just think that's such a wonderful balance for Isda in her like darkness to have someone who brings sunshine into her life. Like he's my favorite and he was the funnest to write.
I love that he always had like the little caramels, like the little sweets. That was so cute. Yeah, did any of the characters give you trouble? Like, did you have a hard time connecting with any of them at first?
Yeah, so Cyril was the hardest for me, just because like he was the one that changed the most from the very beginning to the final draft. Like he changed a lot and he also like deepened a lot. He was very cardboard cut out, like villain-y type guy in the beginning. And I think he really like grew into like his own person and I had to really like dig deeper and figure out like how to make him be a real human that people could believe and like be afraid of, because I think the more realistic they seem, the scarier they are. And so so for him, I think he was the hardest to grasp, and also because he's not in a lot of the scenes, and so it's hard to like he's in scenes, but like a lot of the scenes is like Isda by herself or Isda with Emmerich, and like Cyril kind of comes in and out like as he needs to. And so it was harder to like show his humanity in those small glimpses as well. So that was tricky.
Yeah, I really like his character. I think you did a great job.
Thanks. He was hard.
Yeah. I feel like the villains kind of always are, because it's like you said, you want them to feel, you want people to like feel that they're villainous without being like, I'm a villain.
Yeah. So it's super funny to me. Like I'll see reviews sometimes where people are like, I totally knew Cyril was a bad guy. Like that was a terrible twist. I was like, that wasn't supposed to be a twist. Like I thought it was pretty clear from the beginning that he was the bad guy. Like wasn't trying to surprise you there. It's always funny to me when people say that. I'm like, well, sorry, I didn't make that a surprise when you apparently wanted it to be.
All right, I have a couple more questions. Before I ask them, I'm going to just remind everybody that there is a Q&A thing. You can ask your questions, and we are going to be giving away a prize for a random person who asks a question. So if you want to get those in now, so we can just dive into those relatively soon, that would be wonderful, especially if you are like an aspiring writer. If you have any questions specifically about the book, feel free to just ask it in the Q&A. No question is a bad question. So, okay, I have another question for you, which is people will be reading this book. And when they do, they will be done. And then they'll want to know what is next. So what is next?
So I get asked a lot if there's going to be a sequel. There's not going to be a sequel. Like it is from the beginning always been a standalone to me. And I think that it would kind of cheapen the ending to tell anything that happens next, because I kind of want audiences to be able to figure out what they think is going to do next. But I do have another book coming out next year. It's another standalone. It's called A Forgery of Roses, and it is another fantasy, like gothic fantasy, but it's a murder mystery. So it's about this girl whose magic she's a portrait artist, and her portraits can alter people's physical bodies. So when she paints them, she can change their bodies. And she gets blackmailed into doing a portrait of a dead man, trying to bring him back to life. And it kind of spirals from there. Like, as she tries to do this, it turns into like this big nefarious plot that is lots of fun. So
that sounds so good. Was it like inspired by Dorian Gray at all?
That is part of the inspiration. Yeah. So like we pitch it as Stalking Jack the Ripper meets The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about it. And I think people who enjoy Sing Me Forgotten will find a lot to love in A Forgery of Roses, but I also am hoping that A Forgery of Roses will reach like new readers, because it's got a very like thriller type pacing, and it's like a lot more murder mystery. So it's really fun.
That's so fun. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that I love gothic books and I love murder mysteries. So I'm super excited. Oh, I just moved my vaccinated arm and that hurt really bad. Oh man. Okay. So we might have some aspiring writers listening to us right now. Do you have a piece of like, what is your main piece of advice for them? Because I feel like we could talk for literally 5 hours about advice for new writers, but like, what is the core number one piece of advice you have?
I think one of my number one like things that I always try to tell like earlier writers or whatever is to find the joy in the writing, and find what about it makes you happy and brings you that piece. Because especially if you're pursuing publishing, like it turns into a business, and there's a lot of numbers, and there's a lot of like market talk, and there's a lot of rejection, and a lot of things that can like suck the fun out of it. But if you like know how to find the joy, and if you know what you love about it, and if you know what makes you passionate for it, it can make it so much easier to get through like the hard times. And then another thing is like find your tribe.
Yes.
because I felt like I totally leveled up once I found writer friends who I could like swap chapters with, and who I could commiserate with when we got rejections, and who we could celebrate with. Because there's a lot of like secret keeping in publishing, where you find out a thing and you can't talk about it for like 6 months or a year or whatever. And it's nice to have like a couple friends that you can share with, and they can be like, yay, and like, even though you can't tell anybody else. And so I think like finding the joy and finding your tribe are like my two top, I guess that's two things, but
no, I mean, they're both so important, especially like finding your people. Because it's like you said, like this can feel so lonely, especially when you're first like getting into it. I would recommend too for young writers to just remember, because it's really hard. We feel like the power imbalance a lot for like if you are querying, which means like you're submitting your work to agents to try to seek representation. Like it feels like there's a power imbalance there, and you feel like agents are like unicorns, and then editors are like mythical beings. But at its core, like this is very much a business, and you are advocating for yourself first and foremost. And that's so hard to remember, to just like, I used to query anybody who would just like, they could have like a State Farm shirt, like State Farm agent. And I'd be like, oh yeah, do you want to read my book? But like, you have to validate yourself first, and not like seek the validation from somebody else. Like you have to advocate for yourself first and foremost, which would be my advice. Because it is a really hard business. It's a really great, very, fun. I'm super glad I get to do the things that I do.
Same.
Yeah, but it's hard at its core. It's really, really hard. But I think it's really good advice that you gave, especially finding your people.
Yes, for sure. And I think like finding people that are in a similar state as you, but then also like reaching forward and reaching back, like helping the people behind you, and like reaching forward to the people ahead of you, because they can give you advice that, like it's just, and everybody, it seems like in the writing community, not everyone, but almost everyone wants to help each other, because we all know how hard it is. And so we are all kind of like trying to lift each other up. Like, you can do it. Like, like I have met nothing but like wonderful people in you know, other writers and stuff. And I think we're all like kind of introverted, but we also like thrive on like validation, and so we like love each other, but we get each other. So I don't know. I love the writing community. So
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like we're all introverts, like you said, but at the same time, when it comes to like publishing a book specifically, we're like, no, give me like all the people. I want to talk to everybody.
yeah,
Like, let me talk
let's
to
all
you.
be friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some fun speed round questions for you.
Okay.
I will say too, there's some questions in the chat which I also see, and we'll try to remember to ask. But
Okay.
if you really want to get yours asked or answered, write them in the Q&A, because that'll be helpful for us to like pick somebody at the end of this as well.
Yeah.
So if you have a question in the chat, try to throw it in the Q&A. I will try. If you don't do it, I will try to find it, but that would be very helpful. Okay, so we have some fun speed round questions. You're not allowed to think about these ones. You just have to
Oh, no.
answer.
Okay.
They're not that hard. Don't worry. We'll start off easy.
Okay.
What's your favorite animal?
Dog.
Wolf. All right. Who's your favorite superhero?
Thor.
All Might. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Purple. Yay.
Yay.
What's your favorite food?
Indian.
Ooh, yeah. Mine's sushi.
Oh, nice.
Favorite TV show?
The Vampire Diaries. That's the first thing that popped in my head, I guess.
Like I know. I actually don't even know a Goblin. K-drama Goblin.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not okay. Phantom or Raoul?
Phantom.
Phantom for sure. Okay, best Phantom of the Opera song?
Music of the Night.
Absolutely. Okay. Favorite Disney villain?
Jafar.
Ooh.
Or Ursula. I really like Ursula too.
Ooh, I like that one. I think mine. Okay, actually, I think my favorite one is Hades. So I'm going to change this question. Who is the scariest?
I forgot about him. Okay, I love Hades. The scariest. That's hard. Maybe like Scar or something.
Scar's scary. I think for me, it's Mother Gothel from Tangled, because she's the most like awful. Real. She's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've had a lot of people tell me that Sing Me Forgotten reminds them of Rapunzel, which I had it never occurred to me. But then once they pointed it out, I was like, "You're totally right."
I can kind of see that. I didn't think about that initially either, but yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I've had several people say that to me, and I'm like, I should have done that on purpose.
Okay, before we get into the Q&A, I actually did think of another question for you that I want to ask. Okay, so there's a lot of obviously like music in this book. Do you come from a musical background?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me about that?
Sure. So I grew up, I started playing the piano when I was 6. And I did like piano all through like my childhood, like all growing up. I started playing the flute when I was 11. And then I like did vocal training and like was in choirs, and I did musical theater. And then now I also like play the organ some. Like I've never been formally trained on the organ, but I like play the organ for stuff.
That's really cool.
So it's like music has always been kind of like my other love. It was always like always it was like, am I going to be a musician or am I going to be a writer? Because those were like the two loves. And it was like always kind of a toss up which way I would go. But I think in my heart of hearts, I always loved writing more. And so when it came down to like picking a path and like, what am I going to spend my time doing? I picked writing. And like, it does kind of make me sad sometimes because I do miss music a lot. As a mother of young children, I don't have a lot of time. So it's like, I can't do both. Like, so I just don't play. And like to the point where like my kids, I was talking to them the other day and I mentioned a flute and they didn't know what it was. And I was like, I play the flute and my children don't even know what a flute is. Like that's really sad. And so I'm hoping that like, as my kids get older and start going to school and stuff, I'll be able to have time to like write and also have a hobby and like get back into my music. But right now it's been tricky, but yeah, music has always been a big part of my life.
It's hard, I think, like finding, the hobby once you are officially writing as a career, because for a long time that was your hobby. You're trying to like make it your job.
And now it's a job.
But that is what you do in your free time. So it's like, wait a second, what do I do now? So I totally get like what you're saying, especially like the time aspect too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Janine, and Janine wants to know, how did you choose the name for your book?
was actually kind of tricky because I am like the pickiest person about titles in the entire world. Like you could like meet any author and I'm probably pickier than them about my titles. Like I like have to have it like exude like just the right emotion. It has to be like has the right sounds, and like I'm kind of ridiculous about it to the point where like I'm like snap out of it, Jessica, like just pick a title, no one cares. So Sing Me Forgotten took a little while, but it was an early title. Like we didn't change it, you know. I pitched it to Pitch Wars as Sing Me Forgotten. It was Sing Me Forgotten when I got my agent, and when we took it on sub, and when it sold, and now when it's on the shelf. Like it never changed once I came up with it. And honestly, my initial drafts of Sing Me Forgotten didn't fit the title as well as it does now. Because I think it fits it better now than it did in the earlier drafts. But I think my thing was I was thinking about what was it? We Hunt the Flame. I loved that it was like a sentence. I was like, I want a sentence for my title. And so I was like trying to figure out how to make a sentence. And then I came up with Sing Me Forgotten, and I feel like it was like a stroke of brilliance.
It's perfect.
Because I don't know how I came up with it, honestly. I think it just like popped in my head one day and was like, there we go. That's it. That's all,
That's how it was for me with All the Stars and Teeth too. But like for All the Tides of Fate, I had a list that I had to send to my editor, and it was originally something totally different that they did not love. Did you have that experience with Forgery, or did you just know that one's title as well?
Forgery was harder too, because it started out really hard to come up with a title for anyway, because I'm very picky. And so it was just called The Painting Book for a really long time, because I was like, I refuse to come up with a title that I hate, so I'm just going to call it The Painting Book. So we called it Painting Book for forever. And then I came up with a title that I liked. We called it The Crimson and the Quiet for a while, but my editor thought that sounded too horror, which she was right, but I still liked it. But so then I had to, she's like, can we try to think of something that sounds like a little bit more fantasy? And I was like, okay. So then I was like throwing in, like, I have this note app, like the note app on my phone, and I had like just words that like had to do with like painting and like the themes of the book and like colors, and because like crimson is like a really like strong theme, like color, because she's a portrait artist, so she's like painting, and so crimson is like a theme. And so I was like crimson, red, and then I was like, oh, roses are red, and then like, and so finally like, and then I like finally I like came up with it, and then I was like, there we go, that's it, they better like it, because I'm not coming up with anything else. And luckily like they were all like, oh yeah, we're on board with that, and I was like, sweet, because I was done. Like,
I think that's perfect. That was such a perfect, and it's so funny. I know the Note app well. All the Tides was originally, I gave it to them as All the Red We Weave, because I was like, blood, red. I'm glad we changed that.
Yeah, I think it's tougher with sequels because you kind of have to make it like match your first one, but like not be the same. And so I feel like that's even harder than just coming up with like a title in general, because it has like constraints it has to fit into, and that would be tricky. So good on me for dodging that one. I don't have to write a sequel. So.
Oh, okay. We have a question from somebody you might know, called Kim Chance.
Oh, who's that?
And Kim wants to know, how do you come up with your ideas, and do you have advice for people who struggle to do so? Which I think is a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think a lot of authors probably are like me, where you see other authors talk about these binders full of ideas they have, or these notebooks full of ideas. And I'm not one of those people. I'm like, I'm like a one idea at a time girl. Like, and every time I finish a book, I'm like, well, that was it. I got nothing else. Like, guess I'm done. Because I never
over.
I know, I'm like, I guess I'm never gonna have an idea again. And so for me, coming up with ideas is tricky. Usually lately it's been trying to kind of come up with like, what do I love to write about? And so for me, it's like, and I didn't realize this before I wrote Sing Me Forgotten, but like after, I was like, well, I really loved writing like gothic and dark. Like I loved that. So I'm like, I got to do more of that. And so kind of like thinking about those things and trying to read in those genre, in that genre, I started reading a lot of like thrillers and a lot of like horror, not a lot because I'm like a pansy, but like borderline horror, like not real horror, but and like darker fantasy and like dark academia and like just like the darker stuff. And like, so I think a lot for me is like reading stuff that gets me excited, or watching TV shows or movies that get me excited. And a lot of times like I'll read something in a book and it'll make me think of something that's completely unrelated, but like I'm like, oh my gosh, that'd be such a good idea for a book. And then I like write that down. And usually for me, it takes like a couple different seeds of things, and then you like put them, and then finally you like realize they can all go together and it like makes the story. And so like for Forgery, it was like, well, I really like, you know, dark stuff. I really like Gothic. What are some other Gothic like books? And there's like, oh, like there's, you know, Rebecca, there's Frankenstein, there's, you know, and then I thought of like the Picture of Dorian Gray, and I was like, huh, you know, and so then it kind of like went from there. And so I think just like partaking and like consuming other media really helps me, and like living your life too.
Same. I think that's like the thing that people forget about too. Like sorry, I'm like battling my blinds right now, and like the lighting changes. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Especially like for me, watching anime or watching K-dramas or like just or music and Broadway shows, like just consuming things. If I am in a mode where I'm like deeply consuming things, I will pretty much come up with an idea. Like, that is how I work. And I think it's just so important, especially like you said too, like living your life, which we forget to do.
Yep.
We're running like low-ish on time, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but I think we'll like move through them pretty quick so we can get, Okay. Do you plan to venture past YA?
I would love to write adult. I would never write middle grade ever, because there's no kissing in middle grade. So.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, which book was harder to write, the first standalone or the second?
The first one, because I didn't know as much, honestly. And like Sing Me Forgotten wasn't my first book. It was like my fourth or fifth or something like that. But it was harder just like conceptually, like because I just didn't know. I learned so much like with each book about like how to write a book and how to outline and how, you know, like how to get a character from point A to point B to point C. So I feel like in some ways it gets easier with each book, but it also gets more challenging because now you know what the expectations are and you have to like one up yourself. But I think Sing Me Forgotten was kind of the book where I learned about story structure, and I knew what stories, like I finally, like I grasped it. Like that's when I like unlocked story structure and like how to like story beats and like character arcs. And like, that's kind of like where it like finally clicked for me. And so Forgery honestly was probably the easiest book that I've ever written because because I outlined, which is weird because usually sophomore books are not that
I was going to say, I've never heard, you were the first person who has ever told me that their second book was easier.
I feel like I mean, but I'm paying for it because my next book is like putting me through the ringer. So, yeah, I outlined Forgery in like a week, and then I like spit it out in a month. And that draft it's deepened, but I haven't had to like do major like overhauls, or like I haven't had to like cut huge chunks. Like with Sing Me, I had to like throw it out and start over from scratch at one point. And I think it's because I learned more about my process, and I also learned more about like the expectations of story structure. So
yeah, definitely. Wow, that is, I'm really jealous you avoided the book 2 curse.
It's catching up with me on book 3 though, so it's fine.
Okay, well, yeah, it comes up somewhere. Kind of like spinning off something you just said. I think it's Elena. Elena wants to know, how was your initial draft different? Without getting into too many spoilers, I don't know if you'll be able to answer like too much, but
it's so different. Like it's almost unrecognizable. And like, I mean, it's recognizable because it's got the same characters, and like it goes bad, and you know, whatever, but it's very different. Like in the original draft, Isda worked at a bank, and she did not live in the opera house. She lived close to the opera house, but she was not in the opera house. She worked at a bank. And there was, I don't know, it was very different. It's almost like, I think she dies at the end of my first draft. Do you remember that, Adalyn?
Yeah, she does. Died. When you just said that, I was like, oh yeah, she did.
Forgot about that. It's kind of embarrassing. I think about it. So like, Who killed their
that's how
main
it
character?
works though. That's how like writing works. Like you draft and then you get feedback and you're like,
And then you get
feedback
better.
clicks with you and then you make it better. Yeah, that's
Yep.
how it works.
Yep. So that first draft is a special. Maybe I'll have to like unveil an embarrassing scene from that rough draft someday and share it with the world for everyone's entertainment.
That would be delightful. Okay, what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome while writing your books?
I think getting out of my own way, like imposter syndrome. Like I feel like, why is anybody going to want to read my book? Like, why do I think that I'm like good enough to run with like people like Adalyn Grace and Shelby Mahurin? Like who am I? Like I'm like no one, you know? So I think everybody feels that way. Like it's like, who's going to read my book when they could read, you know, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue? Like who's going to read mine, you know, or like whatever. And I think part of that, like the hardest thing for me is like shutting the editor, like the critiquer person off and like just letting myself, like giving myself permission to create and giving myself permission to suck and then giving myself permission to like make it better and do my best and say, you know what, I may not be able to write The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but I can write Sing Me Forgotten, and Victoria Schwab didn't write that book. So
I mean, absolutely. And that is such a hard thing. But even like your example of Addie LaRue, Victoria Schwab couldn't write Addie LaRue 10 years ago, or however many years ago when she first started. You know, it's a constant, we're constantly growing with every single one of our books.
Exactly.
And we are definitely our worst critics. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel that. I'll answer this question really fast. It's just, what kind of dog do I have and what's his name? This is Mooka, and he's a Labradoodle. His sister is down the stairs sleeping, and she's a Sheepadoodle, a little puppy, 16 weeks old, and he's just super chill. I love him. He's great.
He's like sleeping the whole time.
I know, he's perfect. I love him. I'm obsessed with him. Okay. Andrew wants to know, why did you choose writing as your career? There's like a two-part for this question. It's, would you say you chose it instead of music? And if so, why? Like, why did you choose writing?
I did choose it instead of music. And I think I chose it because while I enjoyed music, I love writing. Like I can't not write. Music I can live without. Like I love music, but obviously, I mean, like my kids don't even know I play the flute. So like I can live without playing music and I'm okay. But you asked me to go without writing, and like the idea of that is like severely depressing to me. Like even if I'm not writing for publication, just for myself, like I've always been like, you know, in high school I was always writing in journals, like not journaling because I don't journal because like, I don't know why you'd think I would, but I was always writing stories and like, I mean, poetry. I wrote a ton of poetry. I wrote song lyrics. Like I was always writing stuff. And so I think for me, it came down to what is the thing that I cannot live without? And it was writing, not music, even though I love music. Like it makes me like my heart hurt to say that I don't love music. I do love music. It's just which one can't I live without? And the writing was the one that won. So it was a hard one though.
Is your mom's name Susan?
No, that is my husband's mom's name.
Okay, I knew that
So
was a mom. That was a mom comment. Yeah, I saw that singing and piano will always be part of you. And I was like, that's something my mom would say.
Yep.
Okay, I saw a question in the comments that was, what is your favorite romance trope? Mine is love triangles. I think it gets such a bad rep. I love a good love triangle. I
don't know why people hate on them so much. I feel like people hate on them because Twilight has a love triangle, but like everyone loves Twilight. Like they don't admit that they do, but like deep down, everyone finds something like somewhat alluring about Twilight. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe you don't like it now, but you like at some point in your life, you I don't know, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, I mean,
watch a K-drama that has a love triangle and you will be in love with them. That's all I'm going to say.
As long as, and like, I don't even think that the love triangle in Twilight was that good, but if you get like a well done love triangle, like those are good. And like,
they're so good.
It's so, and I think the funnest thing about romance is like how you keep characters apart so that you're like rooting for them to get together. Like that's the best thing. And like how do you like torture readers to the point where they're just like, kiss already, come on, you know? And so I think the love triangle is good. I think my favorite, I mean, I love enemies to lovers, but I feel like that's like stereotypical because everyone loves enemies to lovers. I just really like slow burn, like where it takes them a really long time. Because like if you draw it out for forever, by the time they get together, it is like the most triumphant thing in the entire world. And so I love when it like when they make you work, like when the author or like the movie or whatever makes you work for it. Like I loved in the Vampire Diaries that it took them 4 seasons for Damon and Elena to get together. 4 seasons. So by the time they kissed, I was like, yes, like I was like so happy I was gonna cry. Like it was, and I just love when TV shows or movies or books do that to you, where they make you wait for it so that it's like a huge payoff. So.
I agree. I don't know if we have time for another question. I think we might.
Yeah, we might be getting close.
We might be getting close. So I will just ask if people want to find out more about your books or more about you, where can they find you?
So I mostly, like as far as social media, I mostly stay on Instagram. So that's Jessica Olson 123. But I'm also, sporadically on TikTok. I put updates on Twitter, but I don't really tweet much, so don't follow me there unless you like just want updates.
That's what I say too.
And then I have like a newsletter that's just like on my website you can find. And that's probably going to be like the most thorough way to keep updated, just because I put like all of the information and I do like a monthly newsletter. So, but yeah, so my website's just jessicasolson.com.
So everywhere, you can find her everywhere.
I mean,
She's
everywhere. I'm not everywhere, but almost. I don't have a Facebook page. People keep being like, do you have an author Facebook page? I'm like, I don't even go on Facebook, guys.
I feel like that's really good for like romance writers. I feel like they can definitely find a good home on Facebook, but I don't necessarily know that like YA is where it's at for that.
No, because teens don't use Facebook. So, and neither do like, 20 somethings, which tend to be the other group that read YA. So.
Yeah. Well, this was so fun. Oh, you can find me on Instagram. I'm author Adalyn Grace. But I am so happy we finally got to talk about your book, and this was so much fun.
So fun.
Gibsons, you can come back and say hi to us before we all head off. Thank you all so much.
And you can see Adalyn's very special blurb on the cover.
I have a home forever on Jessica's book.
She had like ownership of my book.
Before we sign off for the night, how do we want to pick who our question prize winner is?
Yeah, I think we want to do it randomly, right?
Can we do a random winner of one of the people who asked questions? Even if we didn't answer them.
Sure. Okay. So I just saved the chat transcript so we know who answered, and I just saved the Q&A. I have your email addresses. I am the all-powerful genie. I have your email addresses. If we pick you, we will contact you. So check your spam folder. And that's about it for us. Sing Me Forgotten and All the Stars and Teeth and All the Tides of Fate are available from Gibson's Bookstore. Jessica was very kind to send us possibly the nicest book plates I have ever seen. They're like vellum and gold. They're gorgeous. And she sent us art prints and bookmarks. So if you order Sing Me Forgotten from Gibson's Bookstore, you get the signed book plate, you get the art print, you get the bookmark, and we'll tie it up with a little bow. So thank you so much for the two of you for joining us. Thank you, everybody joining us from home. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adalyn.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jessica.